why do you coach? What's your coach's why?
Man, so like when you first send out the email
Yeah.
and then I got to listen to some of your podcasts and whatnot, I was like, I've got to be on this show because it's cool. Like what you're doing is neat.
What state produces the best high school rodeo?
Okay.
Today on the Coach of What podcast, we have a very special guest joining the show today, kind of in a very unique field, if you would. Maybe not unique for some people, but unique for general collegiate athletics. He grew up in the state of Wyoming. He's a certified farrier, as well as spent many, many years and kind of got his start in the horsemanship world as a shoeman, if that's what we want to call it. And he loves that side of things. And then obviously he found his way into the college world. So I can't wait for you guys to, coaching world. Hopefully you guys stick around to hear his story because it's very unique, very cool. While he was in college, he qualified for the college national finals rodeo in tie-down roping while he was competing at Central Wyoming College. So today we welcome Coach Drew Shrock from Central Wyoming College.
With the world of coaching evolving and the carousel always changing, we're going to sit down with some coaches and we're going to figure out what they coach, how they coach, and most importantly, why they got into this profession. My name is Kason Wilkinson, and I am your host of the Coach's Why podcast.
That's a great question.
That was my coach's why.
Welcome back to another Coach of What podcast, guys. We have a very special guest in the building today, completely different than what we've ever had on the show. And I'm super excited to talk to Coach here, just because I don't know much about this sport, but it's cool that there is this at the next level. So today we have Coach Andrew Shrock, head rodeo coach. You heard that right, rodeo, at Central Wyoming College. Coach, I appreciate you jumping on today. Thanks for taking the time to join us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Excited about it.
Yeah, of course, man. So kind of get started here. I always kind of let you take over for a little bit, so kind of, let us know where you grew up and when you got involved in sports, but maybe in particularly rodeo. I feel like rodeo is one of those things where it's probably which is probably way bigger than I think it is. I know we're my area right here in New Mexico. It's a very big thing. I don't know how many PBR events we get. I don't know if we get many, but we have a lot of smaller events in this area. So I know it's a big thing, right, where I live. But before we get into that, I'm already jumping ahead. Go ahead and let us know. I guess what I was going to say is I feel like it's one of those things where people start relatively young, right? And I feel like that's something, maybe they're just around it and they fall in love with it. I know there's a whole bunch of different events in maybe this realm of the world, or in the sport world, I should say. But kind of let us know when you got involved in rodeo and maybe any other sport that you might have been involved in and where you grew up.
Perfect. Yeah, so I was born and raised in Southwest Wyoming and graduated from Green River High School. And as far as rodeo goes, like I was the typical little kid. Like my mom was born and raised on a ranch outside of Pinedale, Wyoming. My aunt and uncles always ranched, and that's always been my passion. But I wasn't brought up in a ranching family or anything like that. And in fact, my mom and dad got divorced when I was 5 years old. So, but I'd go and spend time with my aunt and uncles, and it was just my thing, man. I loved being the cowboy. And so it was pretty fortunate when I was 11, my mom married my dad now, who then adopted me when I was a freshman in high school, and he roped, and that was my out, and I loved it, and it was the thing that kind of kept me driven, and it was the thing that they held over me when my grades were dropping or things weren't going well. They took roping away from me. So yeah, I started like then when I was 11, it was game on for me. So
absolutely. No, that's cool. So you started from a young age, right, 11 years old, and got into roping. So I guess just before we get into anything else, right, I know that and you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess there's a few different events, and I kind of want you to dive into the events that maybe are what you see in the youth side of things, but also maybe when you get to the collegiate side of things. But I know there's, I guess, like the big rodeo shows, right, PBR, so you have the true bull riding, but I know there's roping, you have the barrel races, right, and then I do know, or what else is there on my top of my head I'm trying to think about. Yeah, and I know there's the rodeo clown game, right? Where the rodeo poker, right? I know that's a fun little,
Yeah.
yeah, I know that's a fun little thing for the community to get involved in. But what are some of the events that somebody like me who's not familiar with the sport itself? What are some of the things that maybe you see in the youth side of things, but also collegiately that you guys compete in?
So like basically, I think you're kind of asking like how kids develop their way up through to get to the collegiate level, maybe. But just like everything, it's just like in wrestling. I mean, you got your USA wrestling and you got your locals. So then you have little local associations where these kids are able to kind of dabble around in it and and see if they got the horse and they got the skills and then they do that and they just work their way up through, and there's so many opportunities in the sport of rodeo now with, I mean, they have like the NFR, which is the Super Bowl of professional rodeo. But in conjunction with that, and that's held every December down in Las Vegas, but in conjunction with that, they have all these junior NFR things. And I mean, these kids are making like 75,000, 100,000 when they go down and they compete at these things. So, I mean, the opportunity is just like out of this world. And it's the coolest time to be a collegiate coach,
Right.
and because even passes, before, during, and past this level, the opportunity is amazing.
Right. So competing in these events or competing in rodeo, like is rodeo, I guess what kind of events are associated with the term rodeo? Is there, I know like we said roping, there's the traditional bull ride, things like that. Is that kind of what you have at the college ranks as well, or is there like what events, if I were to say, hey, I'm going to go watch Central Wyoming compete this weekend in wherever it might be, right? You going to Idaho or down south. What events could I show up and watch?
So we have the three rough stock events. There's bareback riding, saddle bronc riding, and bull riding. Um, then we have on the men's side, we have team roping, steer wrestling, and tie down roping. And then on the women's side, you have barrel racing, breakaway roping, goat tying, and then the men and women, like they can both compete in team rope. So
Okay.
there's like 4 events for the women and 6 for the men.
I got you. Okay, I got you. So, all right, I'm going to save that question for later. I wrote it down, but I'm going to save it for later because I'm really interested in some of those things. And as you mentioned just now, like the development of athletes and the opportunity that not only they have, but you have on the recruiting side. So we're definitely going to touch base on that here in a little bit. But, I'll be honest with you. I didn't know that rodeo was a collegiate sport. Whenever I was looking, I saw you. I was like, I have to talk to you. So I guess my question is rodeo always been something that's call it like I know it's not everywhere, right? Like I know it's certain areas. Like I know that there's fishing kind of down southeast, down in like the Georgia area down there, right? So like I know it's not across the country. So is rodeo always been in the college world for athletics, or is it a relatively new, I guess path that colleges have taken?
No, well, actually, in this area, like say Central Wyoming College, for instance, back in the 90s, they'd got rid of all their athletics, and rodeo was the only sport that we had here.
Oh
And I
wow,
actually
okay.
came and competed here for the coach that preceded me as a head coach here. Um, so there's like, I mean, back in the 70s, there was college rodeo. I mean, all of the guys that we looked up to, I mean, that went on and won world championships, they had done it. While this region is, and Wyoming in general, we have a lot of support for the sport of rodeo because that's all Wyoming has is.
Yeah.
So as a collegiate uh, coach, we get a big draw because we have so much financial support from the college, and from the state. Um, yeah, so
That's
it's
awesome. Yeah, I mean,
it is
sounds like you
awesome.
have a great opportunity right there.
It's cool. Yeah, and it's way neat to be part of all of it for sure. So
So with all the financials and stuff, and sounds like resources isn't really an area that you guys lack. So you told me that you competed at the next level, right? You got to compete at Central Wyoming. So is there which obviously there is a recruiting process, right? Like you guys are still doing some of that. I know you told me when we first tried to get together, which I appreciate you still keeping me on the hook to get back on here. But last time we spoke, you said that you were actually recruiting a wrestler who was a four-time, I believe, state champ, and you were trying to get him on your roster. So I guess going back to your recruiting process, what was your recruiting process like, as an athlete back then? And what's the, I guess two-parter here is what was your recruiting process like, and when did you know that you could compete at the next level? Was there an event you went to that you broke a certain time, right? And that's another question I'll have for recruiting later. But in a lot of things, right, like rodeo is a timed, for the most part, right? Everything's timed. So what? Correct. Yeah. Okay. So was there a certain score, certain time that you hit that like kind of told you that you could go? I mean, what was your process like, and how did you know I can get there?
I guess honestly, like especially being from Wyoming and the crowd that I ran with, they were all competitive, and there was just there was no question that I wasn't going to go college rodeo. And when I got recruited back then, like I came up here, and actually we were one of the only colleges here, or Central Wyoming College was the only college with a barn, their own barn.
Oh, okay.
And so that was my draw. Like I practiced all the time, and like that was my thing. And I came up and practiced with the coach, and I mean we got along. I mean I ended up being like his team captain. He loved tie down roping. He was a saddle bronc rider, but he loved the event that I kind of stood out in as at the time. And like I think he just admired my work ethic, huh? But I knew I was going to come and college rodeo, and I knew all my buddies were going to, and we were going to be button heads and doing the thing. So,
and maybe just talking about, because I know you said you have a lot of financials. What do you think makes rodeo in the level of, like you said, like where you were, Central Wyoming is the only place who had a barn, right? What do you think some of these like reasons, quote unquote, I guess we can just say quote unquote on these reasons, why rodeo, or maybe like I mentioned earlier, like the bass fishing, some of these kind of more niche sports that aren't, on a mass level, I guess, when it comes to like availability. Is that because of the financial backing, do you think? Or do you think it's more of the clientele that you have, right? Like you, as we all know, if you don't know America, well, I don't know what to say. But obviously your neck of the woods, right? Like those 3, 4, 5 states up there, heavy in ranching versus, like going to Southern California, you're probably not going to see much, or if anything, of what you guys have there. So do you think it's more of like demographically where you sit is the main reason, or do you think it's more financial support? I mean, what do you think is the reason why rodeo isn't, maybe offered more across the country?
I think that there's obviously it's expensive, no doubt.
That's fair.
You know what I mean? Like and to be able to have the livestock and the facilities and get the team up and down the road. Financial thing is huge, no doubt. Like I said, we're blessed and spoiled rotten to be able to do it where we're doing it and at the level we get to. And then I think, just the area in general. I don't think that there's any college rodeo teams like, say, east of the Mississippi. But, they come from Cal Poly and all the western states. So there's like Montana State University up in Montana, but they're not. But in
Billings.
Gosh, no, they're not Billings. I can't. It starts with anyhow. They have like so much support community wise. They don't need any support from the state. I don't think like they're so. I think these communities get behind these different programs, and some win and some don't, but the communities are so behind the kids that, and the product that we're kind of putting out there too. Because there's a lot of these kids that'll go pro rodeo for a couple of years and try it. And then they go back and they become an asset to that, that community and they raise their families there. So, the quality of people that we get to deal with too, I think across the board, when you're dealing with like wrestlers, like you got some great guys, you got great that know how to dig deep and they know wins and losses. That's why I recruit and it's in rodeo. And when they have to start learning how to conduct themselves and be a winner, even when the winning isn't available, then you got good people. So yeah, and I think that's where you get communities that get behind your program.
Yeah, I could definitely understand that, right? It makes sense why you might not see it across the country, but it's interesting that you said, like, I guess livestock probably goes under the radar, and we don't have to talk about how much of one horse or one bull or one piece, whatever the livestock that we're talking about is, but having multiple or an amplitude multiple, however, I don't know the right terminology there. The amount that you'll need to have a team is crucial. So having that support is I would 100% assume now, or is huge. So you said like a lot of people they go, maybe they'll go try pro or whatever their goals are after spending their time with you, or maybe a 4-year. I don't whatever their aspirations are. And then they may go back to that community, that they may not. But for you, right, like you obviously went there and now you're coaching. So when did you decide that coaching is what you wanted to do? I mean, was there a time in life? Was it just you went back, you're obviously in that community, you just hung around? I mean, what was it inside of yourself that, or, maybe moment or person that's like, hey, this is what I want to do with my time?
I don't know that I really set out to be a coach per se. I mean, it all kind of lined up and I love it. But like the teaching thing, I remember when I was going to college here and I got to put on a clinic. My coach allowed me to put on a tie down roping clinic and like I got paid for it. And we used the facility and we used calves, the college calves and whatnot. And I knew right then, like, I love it. I love horses. I love watching the light come on for people. And but my passion for horses, like after I got done with college, I went and worked in the oil field for 4 years or something and was fracking for Halliburton and running the crew out there. And I loved it. Like I learned a lot of things from that job and I still got friends from there, but I didn't want to be in the oil field my life. And I went off to Farrier Science School. And when I got back from there and started shoeing, I got a job teaching the Farrier Science still here at the college.
Oh,
that was my first thing. Yeah. So, but then it kind of worked out because my coach was still here and I was kind of rodeoing and he allowed me to come in for free practice. I was helping out his time event guys rope. I was kind of coaching for free practice. And then got the assistant coaching job 1 year, and then he resigned, and I had the inside track. But so it all worked because I'm shoeing horses, and so I was able to kind of have my own schedule there, and the coaching thing came up, and but I love managing people, and I like that part of the coaching thing, and I love the horsemanship side of it, and so yeah, I don't know, it just pretty well that I get to do what I'm doing.
It's awesome, right? Like if you love what you do, and especially not only even if coaching per se wasn't what you loved, right? The foundation of the sport is what got you into coaching, to share maybe your passion. So that's awesome. I love it. So how long have you been doing this for, right? I know you said that you were there for some time, but how long have you been maybe coaching in general, but now that you maybe the head coach?
Yeah, so I'm just finishing up my 13th year of head coaching, and like I said, I was the assistant coach 1 year prior to that. So, and then I don't know how many years that I was kind of just around here roping with the team and doing that type of deal.
Awesome, yeah. So you've been doing it for a little while. So knowing that you've been around, and let me ask you this: is there, because wrestling has national wrestling clinics, baseball has clinics. Every sport really, I guess the more mainstream quote unquote sports has clinics for coaches. Does rodeo offer that type of resource for rodeo coaches, or is that such a small community that it's more of, you're using your own personal resources?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. And reaching out to other guys. One thing that we do have though, and that was one thing that it was a question that got asked me in my interview, was what would you do to make this program better? And I said, well, I'd have a coach in each event, have a bull riding coach and a bareback riding coach, saddle bronc, all the way down through, just like having your defensive lineman coaches and your defensive backs. And just because but then being able to network off those guys and get people that, are really good mental, and because
Absolutely.
everything's so mental, and we do, that's huge. And then we get a guy that like is really good in the fitness center and takes care of his health, and have that guy, and network off of them. So right now I have 3 other coaches, and yeah, just trying to build, get more. So I'm getting there. It's only taken 13 years, but getting there.
Hey, no, that's awesome though. Like that was a early vision for you, right? Is like having somebody come in who's able to put their effort into one particular area, and I do believe that it does help in a lot of different areas. And I know you mentioned the mental side. If you haven't watched rodeo before, I would assume if you have not watched rodeo before, you should just automatically know it's a very physical sport. But you mentioned the mental side of things, and so just out of like a maybe ignorant or maybe naive question to you, but obviously it's very very physical sport. You have to be strong physically, right, in pretty much all areas. But on the mental side of things, what makes an athlete, maybe somebody like JB who went on for years to be high class, right? And who became such a prolific bull rider, but maybe in there's obviously a bunch of different athletes who found success in all of these events. On the mental side of things, what makes an athlete, maybe become mentally strong in rodeo, but then also how do they break those barriers of, maybe they go from I don't know what's a traditional time, and let's just say I know bull ride time's kind of an idea just because I've watched it a little bit, right? I think it's like 8 seconds, right? Is what they say. So let's just say they go from like a 6'4" to like a 7'1" or like a 6'9", right? They kind of make those little incremental changes or advancements. How does somebody overcome those barriers to kind of go from that time here to now this time here on the mental side?
Honestly, I feel like the guys that, like in my coaching experience and rodeo experience and things, like the guys that can win, and you probably witness it in wrestling too, but they handle their wins and their losses a lot the same. They don't ride their highs too high and their lows too low. Because there's always going to be a tougher guy that steps on the mat, or maybe he's feeling a little better that day, or and in rodeo in general, it's honestly like, even if it's in the barrel racing where the girls are actually competing against another barrel racer in their time, but really ultimately it's a competition on how well they can manage themselves and ride their horse, right? And that's the same way you could be at the top of your game, saddle bronc riding, but not be drawing the right one that allows you to win. And you got to learn how to be able to go home and be like, I didn't win, but I did great, and not be arrogant about it, but be confident about it. Or, hey, man, I had the one to win on, and I muffed up here, but now I know my thing, and now we're going to move forward. So I feel like here and through the years, like this program's built around, like, you got to be ready to come and grow up. You got to be ready you got to dig the 6 a.m. workouts, and not just every day. Not just part of the time, every
Absolutely.
day.
Yeah.
Get in and take it over. That's and like, if you're winning them battles daily, then I really feel like then you can roll with the punches then when it's, the big shots out there, and it's time to go win money. And sometimes you do and sometimes you don't. But being able to ride that ups and downs
for sure.
life. Yeah.
Yeah. So you say, you might have, I'm assuming like whenever it's your turn, if you were talking about bareback or some sort of riding event, right? But like when it comes to like the livestock, that's kind of chosen when it comes to riding, it sounds like it's kind of a randomized thing, right? You train on one, which actually is so funny that we're doing this episode today, because I just watched a quick little, I don't know if it's TikTok or Reel or maybe it was YouTube video, whatever, but JB talking about practice bulls versus like some people get on practice bulls and they practice all the time, and some people don't practice at all. So, it sounds like it's randomized. So some of these livestock or some of these animals, horses or bulls, whatever, give you a better chance to win. Is that because of like whenever they are strapped up, whenever they're getting their juices flowing, right? I don't know how it works. I just know they buck. I've seen that's a conversation for another time. I'm assuming you can tell me how it works, whatever. But ideally, right? Sounds like some of them buck harder than others, or maybe they're more crazy than others. But like, does that? Let's start there. Is that accurate?
Yeah. Yeah. Some are
Randomized.
more athletic than others, and some have, and they'll have their good day and bad day too. But they're scored on how well the cowboy rides them, but how hard the animal bucks, So
see.
50% of the ride is actually on how hard the animal actually bucks, and then the other 50% of it is on how well the cowboy rides it. So you got to have one that's like just about ready to buck you off, but can't quite. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's when you get the 80 and the 90-point rides.
Interesting, yeah, because I was going to ask you, because if you have two or three people who are all at that same time, right, they all make it past the 8 seconds or whatever the time may be in bareback or whatever some of those time limits are, how do they judge those things, right? And so that makes 100% sense whenever you have a crazy.
To qualify an 8-second ride. If you don't ride that long, then you get a no time or no score.
Oh,
Yeah, that's a 0. So you gotta qualify up to the 8 seconds, and then once the whistle goes and you're still in contact and you haven't touched them with your free hand, then they'll score you. But how controlled the cowboy does it and how hard the horse bucks are.
interesting. That's so cool. Okay, I gotcha. Okay, so knowing that's a randomized thing, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the development side of things here in a little bit, I think is a question I want to dive into. But before we dive into like the athletic side of things, on the coaching side of things, what are some challenges that you faced going from kind of 13 years ago to now, right? Or maybe when you completely started at the very beginning, really from maybe assistant coach to the head coach, what are some challenges that you face, whether it's recruiting, practice planning, travel, like whatever the case is, what were some things that you've had to overcome?
On a consistent deal, keeping the morale of your team up and going throughout the season. That's like, and keeping teams hooked, and even when the bad, even when it's not great, that's probably the one thing that like I truly try to make adjustments for each year to be able to ensure that we have an environment that everybody can grow in. And if you don't, but as far as like everything changing, I was talking to my wife this morning and about how entering the team, and I used to print out the sheets of when the team was up, and I'd highlight them in orange and go hang them on the wall in the student lounge, and that now like I email everything, and they enter off Google Sheets, and how much easier that is now, and how much more efficient I've ran. So all those things of technology's helped. We got a brand new facility here that's just 2 years old. It's phenomenal. That helps. It's right across the road from, we're on campus. It's within shooting range of where the team stays in the apartments. That helps. So many things about my job has got easier. And then I say that, but I'm more vested now than I have been in the past, because like I call each recruit, I call 3 references to make sure that they are that person that they say that they are, and they are going to show up on time. But then also when I have that kid that has the little problems in February and he's falling behind, I can get him in and say, hey, man, I called this guy, and this guy, and they all assured me that you were going to dig deep when this came. Now he goes back, now he's got that, oh, you're right. You did. And it's able to, I'm able to kind of pry just a little bit more out of them and try to finish that season out. So they finish their contract and finish what they started, because I don't think that there's enough of that anymore. I don't feel like, finish what you started.
Absolutely.
Even if it's not going the way you want.
Yeah, I tell my kids, if you don't want to do this sport next year, then we don't do it, but we got to finish the season, right? Unless there's a real reason behind it. But, I agree. I think that that's important. And I actually really like that you do that reference check thing. I don't know if all college coaches do that. That's not really something I've got brought up to before, and that's something I haven't asked about, but that's intriguing. I really like that you do that. And like you said, it kind of holds them accountable to finish what they started, but also mental.
When the going gets tough, yeah, you can kind of use them angles. And I mean, shoot, when you talk to somebody's uncle, and then they, it helps. And I've had it, and sometimes it don't, but I've had it help in the past. So
Absolutely. No, that's great. I like that. And I forgot to ask about this when we're talking about how you got into coaching, and I don't want to forget, but I think it kind of plays maybe into some of the challenges you face, because maybe something that this question hopefully will make sense, but hopefully maybe plays a factor into how you get some of your athletes through those tough times, right? Maybe you had like the references thing. Maybe you figured out on your own, but maybe it was a topic. So I guess let me just get to the question: is who was an influential coach to you in your life? It could be as an athlete, or it could be maybe a mentor. And then what did they teach you, right? What do you think like you took from that? Maybe going into the coaching side of things.
well, I got a perfect answer, and I think about him often. And he was my wrestling coach in middle school, Mike Beck. He was awesome. Like, and the one thing that like he instilled in me at that age is like the whole team paid for everybody's, what for your consequences. If you, yeah, we got detention. If anybody got detention, we ran for 30 minutes while they were in detention, and then after that, then we started our 30, 45-minute runs or whatever those were. But he, and there was times that he had us throwing up and puking and things like. I just admired how and like especially later on, how he held us to that accountability all the time. Like that's hard to do from
Absolutely.
start to finish as a coach. And so, I mean, he was my guy that
For
yeah.
sure. I like that. So when it comes to, now that you've gotten to a point where you're developing your own programs and obviously having your own, approach to coaching, what is maybe, so this is a two-parter, one of my favorite two-parters I've added to the show, but what is one thing you've taken from either a coach that you were, under, like I guess as the athletic side of things, or on the coaching side, mentorship. So cause play a factor into the one prior to this. But what is one thing that you've taken and implemented into your program on the mental side of things, right? So like, or maybe not just mental, but mental kind of off the, I guess in my case is off the mat, but in your case, maybe like out of the barn, right? Maybe your people, like how they go, whether it's a social side, relationship side, mental side, whatever the case is, maybe something that you've taken, that you've learned or seen, that you've implemented in that side of things. And then also one when it comes to the actual in the barn stuff. So whether it's practice stuff, drill stuff, maybe just in general, schematic stuff, whatever the case is, something that you can also say that you've implemented in that side of things too.
So I guess I kind of have to give my wife credit for both sides of that deal, because before we even got married, when we were dating, she was working out all the time and doing the thing and taking care of her body and eating right, and I started working out with her, but my stretching was a workout, right? Like I hadn't done much with my body, and so she took the time and waited and helped me like get physical and get in shape again and
Yeah.
get flexible, and then I can get on the ground and play with the kids. But she encouraged me, and this was like the biggest thing ever. She's like, you need to go in and start working out with the team. And I'm like, that's way too much out of my comfort zone, right? Like but she went in with me and helped me start. And that off of the mat, out of the arena, that thing alone has built more relationships with me as a coach and the team anywhere. That deal, because I get in there and I do it. Well, I'm not going to sit there and coach him. I tell him my journey, and we do a warm up, and I make him do an insanity warm up every time, and then we do that stretch. But that's my 20 minutes, and then I let them go choose what they're going to do if they do for the rest of that. So out of the arena, that was the biggest change that I did. My wife's one of the assistant coaches.
Okay.
So
makes sense.
And then she's also big on reading, and she's got me to reading this book is A Colonel and Cowboy, but it talks about, and the Colonel talks about in this book about doing the the harder right.
Mm.
And that's what I try to talk to the team about. Do the harder right. Do the harder thing when it's easy to do it in September when it's fresh and we're everybody's new, but do it in March when it's hard.
Mm.
Do the harder right. And those are the two things, like, I guess, and I owe her both of those deals. Like, she's the one that pushed me to do those things that I'm able to now implement into the team. And by reading and stuff too, like, it's helped me not be such I became more patient. You know what I mean? And
Absolutely.
that's because I'm just a go, go, go type of a guy. And I've actually learned that, like, me being present here is way more important than me being over there trying to everybody be on time, but me being present with a certain,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
so, and building those relationships. So I think, like, honestly, that's probably where the one thing in this program has changed throughout the years is we don't go quite as hard. We're more meticulous about our movements.
Yeah. Work smarter, not harder. Right. I'm gonna write that. I wrote that book down because I'm super intrigued in that. And I think that book sounds like it could. I know it's called Colonel and the Cowboy, but I think that and titles are just titles. But I think that would help out in a lot of different areas of life, I would assume, and not just in rodeo. As you mentioned that you wrestled and you recruit wrestlers. Wrestling's hard, very hard, especially at the collegiate level. And learning and being patient and learning how to get through those hard times is crucial. And that's a lot of that mental side. But I think being a coach is important too, understanding that, it's fun for you at the beginning of the year too, but it can be a grind for a coach too. So we still have to, not only do we have to do those when it gets hard, but we have to also be there for the kids and help develop them in all these different areas, whether it's mental or physical, whatever, so they can get through those times, not only with somebody in hand, right? Some of these people are really far from home, but also just it's a kind of a way of helping them through life too, not only for what this life is, but when they get into the real world, because there's going to be some harsh winters if you're a rancher, and there's going to be some great, we're gonna be able to flourish in some summer. So understanding that when it's hard, we have to fight through it. But being a coach and being able to teach that and be there with them through it is just as important as them doing it on their own.
Right. Yep.
So obviously, I guess realistically, we've talked a lot about kind of how to get to this point, or you say how you've gotten to this point and some of the things that you've had to overcome. And I know earlier you talked about, the development of athletes, right? And obviously that's a big piece, I think, in any sport, but specifically in your sport. So being a 2-year school in general is kind of a difficult thing to get kids developed quick. But I guess my question for you is how do you get kids to develop in such a short period of time in such I would assume, a very technically challenging sport? And really any of those events that you mentioned are probably all have their own technical. You have to be technical in any of those. So I guess, like, how do you get kids to develop from the time they get there in August to the time they leave 2 years from there in May?
Well, I guess, like, on the rough stock side of things, we all the way across the board, we have equipment that, like, it can slow it down, their practice, to where, they can rope a steer at a trot.
Okay.
They can, we got a horse saver and a steer saver that then it's all mechanically driven to where they can practice their technique and getting off and doing all those things. So, and that's across the board. I mean, everybody has those. I mean, each program can go out and put those, implement those type of things
Gotcha.
into their program. And then, as far as, like, for me, like, I did timed events, so the horsemanship side of it for me is huge. To teach them, then, like, I feel like a lot of kids up through high school, they're learning what they need to do, how to swing their rope, what their body needs to do, what their right hand's doing when it's swinging the rope. And then, like, from this point on, I try to teach them like how to get the most out of their horse, and how to make that run every single time, and make their horse mind, if you will, because a horse is only as good as the guy that has a leg on either side of him. And so that's my angle, and that's what I try to do. And some kids, some kids have better horses. It's just the way it is, or better gear, and some are blessed and some aren't, and some have had great horses and the sucker dies, and then you have to learn how to make another one. So the longevity of the sport, that's what I try to teach them, the horsemanship side of it. So
do you allow, or do kids bring their own livestock to campus? If I don't know. Are they allowed to do that?
yeah, they're required to. If they're working a timed event, then they have their own horse, and not required, I guess. There's certain times that kids borrow somebody else's horse that's on the team. The rough stock guys don't. We provide all those, right? Like all they have to have their equipment to strap on the bull or on the bronc that we run in for them. So all the practice stock we provide, but like for the timed event guys, yeah, that's part of the recruiting process. Like how much support does the kid have, and how many, is he going to come with one horse, or do they come with 4 horses and a practice horse? And yeah, that's all part of it. Yeah.
So, you went straight into the recruiting part, and that was going to be my next thing. So that was a great segue there, Coach. I made probably unintentionally, but that was great. So So speaking about recruiting, you said that some kids may have better support with or whether it's from family or whatever, they might have 1 horse versus 4 or 5. So, is there an advantage to, like you said, having like 4 or 5 horses? I mean, that seems like it might be a lot. It might not be. I don't know. But is there an advantage to having the ability to have? It's almost like if you're a race car driver or a dirt bike racer, right? Like you have a practice bike and then you have a race bike, right? Or maybe even 2 race bikes and a practice bike or whatever. So is there an advantage to having that, even though those are, I guess, machines versus an animal, right? That have brains. But I mean, yeah, is there an advantage to having, if somebody has more support, to bring in it 1 versus 4?
Yep. And for the same reasons, you got 2 great horses that you're able to ride in one event, and one gets hurt or ends up sick or, dies, whatever. Then you got another one, and you just rock and roll and you move right on. And yeah. And then, like we had a gal last fall, and she did everything that she was supposed to do, passed all of her classes. Her horse died over Christmas break, and she rode that horse in 4 events. He was phenomenal, and he died, and there she is afoot. So
do you guys have a vet on campus for that type of, or do you guys have like a local vet you work with, or do you guys have
we got a few local vets, and we actually have one that comes here once a week for the kids, but there's local vets like that for 24-hour if you have like a issue, and middle of the night, and one, whatever reason, is wanting to roll over and die. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. That's good. I'm just curious, right? I would assume you have to have like if you're a school, you have to have a nurse on campus, right? Type of thing. So where do you find these athletes? This is a big thing, and I was really intrigued about this. I was waiting to get to the recruiting side just because I think recruiting is intriguing in general. I'm a big recruiting fan. Like, this podcast started with the relationships I built from trying to get kids to the next level, and those relationships with college coaches. I love recruiting, but in rodeo, I was super intrigued about this part. So I'm excited to ask some of these questions. So we'll start with the basic one, which is how and or where do you find your athletes? Are you looking at county fairs? You're looking at high school events? Looking nationally? Where and how are you finding your kids?
Yeah, that's it. So we're pretty fortunate again here in Wyoming, because we have a lot of the National High School Finals rodeo is held Gillette and Rock Springs. I've went out to Lincoln, Nebraska one time, but since I've been a coach, I've bounced back and forth between those 2 communities. So we have that in our backyard, which is nice. And then, but yeah, there's I went to an icebreaker rodeo down in Ogden, Utah here a month ago. There was only 6 other schools, including us there. So that was huge. And it's really, there was kids from Maine, Washington, all Wyoming, Utah, Idaho,
Yeah.
within the region, Canada, Montana. So that was a huge one. I get some recruits out of those deals, but my main source of recruiting is networking off the kids that I actually have on the team right now.
Interesting. Okay.
And work off of them. They're the ones that know the kids. Like I can see talent in the arena, but I would rather have a kid that maybe is a little greener or didn't have quite the upbringing or doesn't have, but that has the heart and is going to show up day in and day out. And those pockets of kids that they hang around, that they know the ones fit our deal. So I network off of them a lot.
So do you guys have, because, again, junior college, they have D1, D2, D3, offer scholarships, some don't, things like that. Are you guys a Division One? Do you guys offer scholarships at your program?
We
athletically?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
I have
Okay.
an athletic budget that I'm able to go off.
Awesome. So have you ever, just for, shits and gigs, I guess, have you, excuse my language, that's actually the first time I've ever said that on the show. I don't know why I said that. I don't know. You usually say S and G's, but whatever. Have you ever looked down to New Mexico for athletes when it comes to rodeo of any sort?
Yeah, actually, I had a gal reach out to me last summer, and then I haven't heard back from her. I don't get very many kids to come from the South up. I get connections all the time, but the weather's a huge thing, and like when you're dealing with livestock and the amount there's a lot of opportunity for those kids down there already as far as jackpots go, and there's a lot. So I don't get I try. And in fact, I had a kid transfer up. He's from Idaho and he went to school down there, New Mexico University or something. And then he transferred back up here. And we get a few of those kids that are from up here that come from a college.
Yeah, right.
I don't get very many high school kids. I just don't.
Yeah. I actually find it's one of those things where I find it interesting because not only did I just talk about this to actually one of my coaches yesterday, but I find it really intriguing when it comes to kids really maybe leaving the state of New Mexico, but maybe just in general, like on your terms, right? Like as you're recruiting kids and you're trying to find athletes, I find it important that we educate athletics down here and really maybe across the board. But as high school coaches to kind of have, and people have listened to this probably know it's a broken record, but education of this, right? So like understanding, like if you're looking to rodeo at the next level or you're looking to, expand in your already current build of knowledge or whatever the case is of whatever sport it is, to kind of give them options and really sit down with them and talk like these are not only the levels of opportunity, JUCO, NAI, D1, right, or NCAA, whatever, but also talk to them about what each school may be looking at, right, and kind of what they offer. And I think that that's going to be important to which I know you said that you do a lot of your essentially like in-house recruiting basically and go out from there. But the kids who are really intrigued, reaching out to you might not only help you with kind of continuing to grow your network pipeline, whatever you want to call it, but also kind of getting some kids out because we helped with that initial conversation, at least in layman's terms, to have them kind of, that wall that might be built already may be knocked down a little bit just because of that conversation that we had, And I think that goes a long way. At least it should. Don't know, but I think it was. But I figured we're big in rodeo down here, so I just had to ask and see if you had anybody come up there or not.
No, and that's the thing. Like, I mean, you just never know where your next recruit's going to come from. And likewise, like I think it's intriguing. I enjoy the process of getting to meet kids and their families and talk to them about the programs, and they get to talk to you about what they do and all their accomplishments but encourage them. And I do every kid that comes and looks at our school, like, please go look at 2 or 3 others. Please do. Like, I'm confident with what we have. Like, and there's not that we're the only college that has what we have, but go see that you know that you want to be here. Because once you sign the dotted line, I'm going to hold you to it, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's important. I think that's a big thing, and I like that you do that. It kind of helps them, get options, right? Like that's why when you go to a restaurant, you have 2 or 3 options, or you have 2 or 3 pages of options to look through, and you can really decide what you want to do. Which maybe comparing comparing going to college versus what you want to eat on a Thursday night might not be the best comparison, but the idea the idea is there.
That they know that they can go and do those things, and that it's all going to look really neat when they're looking at their first college. It just
Absolutely.
is.
Yeah. One of my favorite times of my life was my recruiting process, and I'll never forget it. You know, going on a few visits and talking to coaches from really all over the country. It was a great time. So yeah, really experiencing that time and going with more than one if you have the ability to is very important in my opinion. So I like that. So you kind of talked earlier, and you kind of told me maybe unintentionally what you look for in an athlete, right? Like somebody who's gonna show up to practice, go to class, gonna live up to, maybe not everybody lives up to the hype that they had in high school, but they actually live up to like the personal traits that you recruited them for, right? Like they're a good person, they'll shake your hand, yes sir, no ma'am, whatever the case is. When it comes to that, so you can touch on it on like the level of what do you look for in an athlete, if so choose. But I really want to ask you is, what are some of the challenges? Actually, let me ask you this: when it comes to recruiting, because I mentioned it earlier, and you talked about like how they're scored or timed. Is there like certain marks that you look for when it comes to recruiting an athlete to your program, or is it more of just, like you said, maybe you can see talent or you can see maybe an opportunity when it comes to like development in an athlete? I mean, what kind of stands out to you when it comes to arena numbers, arena performance to say, yeah, I want you to come be a part of Central Wyoming?
I mean, honestly, with the opportunities that these kids have anymore, to be able to see that they've actually put themselves in that environment, in that situation, and either won or lost, but they learned something. You know what I mean? And like, because if they're able to put themselves in that type of situation, numerous times before they get to the college level, they won't be so starstruck when they got here.
Absolutely.
I mean? Yeah. So the more that they've actually nodded their head in competition in some of the bigger
events
arenas and things like that, that's as far as like if I'm looking at a skill set, because there's a lot of guys that can practice pin rope, if you will, but can they go and make that run in competition, have their mindset? And you kind of have to do it to do it. And it's like getting on the mat, like you can sit there and think about it all you want, but until you actually get out there and wrestle for first place, like you've never been there before, you don't know how you're going to react to that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So really just, recruiting kids who are not afraid to be in that moment, and whether they win or lose, right? Like you feel comfortable in their ability to at least come in and develop it, or maybe learn, or whatever the case. And I'm assuming that's a big thing too, right? Like you said, the reference checks is, which I would be. You don't have to tell me all that you asked, but I'm assuming does this kid listen? Is he coachable, or her? Are they willing to learn, type of thing? I'm assuming those are huge things in the sport of rodeo, especially kids who maybe really want to not only be good at the national college level, but maybe the national, international level of professional, right? I would assume that's a big piece that you talk about, is being coachable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And that's 100% it. Like if I get the opportunity to like talk to high school coaches, like I don't want rodeo coaches. I talk to wrestling coaches or basketball coaches. How do they handle losses? How do they handle coaching? Because there's so many times that I won't ever coach a kid in the arena because I don't coach outside of what I know, what I've done. But I get to coach them a lot in life. And how do they handle that? Because those are the hard ones.
Yeah, for sure.
On the mat. But when you're coaching in life and you got to tell a kid something that isn't that fun for you to have that conversation, how do they handle it? Are they going to grow from that, or are they going to, cancer from the inside out? And how's that going to work? So
yeah, absolutely. That's a great thing to have in play as a coach. And great part of the conversation to have with high school coaches and third party coaches, so, or maybe non-direct rodeo coaches. So I love that, having that as a conversation. So final recruiting question really quick. What are some challenges that you feel like you faced when it comes to, like, as you've developed in, going from year 1 as an assistant to now year 13 at your reign now? What are some challenges that you faced as you've developed within the recruiting role that you feel like you've had to not only face, but now you've had to overcome, and maybe feel like you've, figured out, or maybe, kind of got, maybe not a blueprint, but you kind of got the idea of how to handle it now? So I guess some challenges.
Probably the biggest challenge here is where we're located. We're on an Indian reservation, and
Okay.
that, gets brought up a lot. Like, how's everything, is my daughter going to be safe when she goes to school there? And the way that I've kind of handled that, and the way that I answer it, is that I keep them busy enough that they don't want to be trying to find any
Other things. Yeah.
They're not going to be going out there doing extracurriculars, and that's the truth. And also, like, it doesn't really, where you're at, like, if you want to go try to find trouble, you're going to go try to find trouble.
Yeah,
And that,
I think that's fair.
I kind of answered that away too. Like, it's out there everywhere. So that, and then up until we got our new barn, the rest, like, there's other colleges just down the road that had built all, like, the state of Wyoming donated $5 million to all the colleges with rodeo programs to build a barn. And we were one of the last ones to do it. So you want to talk about, that was tough. Like, there was 6-7 years there where all these other colleges had their barns built, and we were still in the old one that I, was in when I went to college here, and which was nice back then, but it got outdated. And so that was hard, because they would come and take a loop. They'd come check out our deal, and then they'd go to Casper, and they'd go to Gillette, and they'd go to Sheridan, and all them colleges had all those new things. And we were, looking like the Hoosiers there in February, and trying to sell that little barn. And it was tough. And I know that we lost some recruits for it, but also gained some good relationships. And now that we got this barn, some of those deals have started coming around with their siblings and whatnot.
Yeah.
So
now you're the new one. Now you're the new kid on the
we're
block.
the new one, and it is super nice. Yeah,
absolutely. That's cool. So I forgot to ask this really quick, but how do you? And this is just intriguing because, like, you say you recruit athletes that have maybe some other, they toes in other sports, right? Wrestling was one of your favorite sports. You said you like to recruit, but in general, how do you train athletes, right? And how do you, when it comes to, like, the program itself, maybe train athletes mentally, but also train them physically to be able to not only handle what's the Wyoming cold, but also, like, competition side of things? And you can go as deep or as light as you want into that, but, like, what are some of the biggest things that you focus on when it comes to training, whether it's a drill thing or a mental thing?
Well, mine's mental, because that way I get to coach everybody, and I coach them daily. I coach them, on the daily. But as far as, like, physical, I try to, like I said, I bring in coaches that have done that. And even if they're not coaching, I invite them in. They'll come and get free practice at it, or we put on clinics to where, like, for each event. And one thing that we just started, this is the second year we've had it, is Champion Living. And what they do is Doug Champion, but he's huge on working out, right? He's got all the workouts and the nutrition and all that stuff. And he's taken these professional level bareback and bull riders and things, bareback riders basically, and put them on a workout program and a diet to where, their longevity of their career is lengthened out. They're more competitive while they're there. And he's just turning these younger guys, what rodeo used to be known as a bunch of cowboy drinking cowboys, right? Now they're turning into athletes. And to be at that level, if you're not doing those things, you're not going to be able to compete. So now they've just stepped up the bar. Well, we got these guys coming in, and they come in with bareback riding instructors, saddle bronc riding instructors, and bull riding instructors. And then we actually spend time in the fitness center. We spend time in the classroom talking about nutrition. And so then I'm able to take those things and keep implementing them into these rough stock guys' life. But
Absolutely.
also, when they work with Doug, they send them their videos from riding. They send them, and then he's sending them workouts. So I guess I'm kind of networking off of other people, but we pay for those guys to come and do a clinic, and then our guys get to reach out to them throughout the year. So
That's awesome. Yeah, no, that's really cool. I like that.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you breaking that down on how you train some athletes and some things that, because I mean, I think it's intriguing how you go about your business every day. And so I appreciate that. So now I want to dive into kind of some of the deeper philosophical questions, I guess. That was a big word, but philosophy questions. And you've been doing it for a little while, so I'm really intrigued, especially on the rodeo side, because it's a little bit different than other team sports. So answer this as you will. But how do you build a successful culture on the level of buy-in and mindset?
I hold them all accountable. I don't care if they're winning or losing. Everybody's held accountable to all the same standards and fundraising, workouts, timeliness, and then being cautious of that. And again, I'm going to make some more changes next year, but like I haven't required any of them to read these books that I've got for them. I just give them to them as, hopefully that they will. But actually the Colonel and Cowboy, I'm going to have them read that book. That's going to be required of them prior to the season starting, just because it talks so much about what the 4% of the elite 4% do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Daily.
Yeah.
And they don't just win by chance. They win because they put themselves in that, they build that world that they're always winning in. And but then, so I guess in all, like, you're just trying to make good people.
Mm-hmm.
Good people win. You know what I mean?
Fair. Yeah.
And that's how, like, and I hear it a lot from other coaches and teams is, man, your team's so tight. Like, how are they so close?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they live in apartments together, but we have structured practice. We have weekly meetings. We have workouts and all these things. Like, I understand they're not going to be bestest of friends all the time. And in fact, some of the boys want to fist fight sometimes. And you know what? Sometimes that's kind of healthy.
Yeah. Yeah.
To have that and get it over with and just move on. But to, like, the other part of, like, building a culture is, like, in our team meetings, I set our table or our chairs up in a circle now. So nobody's behind anybody else, and it encourages people to, like, hey, have that hard conversation. Listen,
absolutely.
I don't feel like you're doing your job. I don't feel like you're putting your weight in, and be able to have that conversation to where, like, hey, guess what? Thank you. Thanks for noticing, and I'm going to step it up because it means something to me.
That's something to you too. Yeah.
That I want to build, and so just those little things that I change a little something every year. But like last year, this last fall is when I decided to put the table in a horseshoe type of deal to where, because we got one guy on our team that's a clown and he sits in the back and I love him to death, but he intimidates people from wanting to talk. But when he's across from everybody, it makes it different.
Yeah, so that's fair.
I'm trying to build that, like, I don't care if you haven't won anything this year, if you've won it all, you all are on the same level when you come in here and you find your own way.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, make everybody on the same playing field and give everybody the opportunity. I love it. I like that. I like that circle, like the horseshoe chair setup. I like that. I'm sure that made a lot of change in some of those relationships, right, and comfort.
Yep.
Absolutely. So how do you build on the other side of it, right? Like the winning side of it as a program, right? Like, I know we talk about and people talk about winning and losing, and as coaches, until you get to the highest level, at that point, I think wins and losses kind of dictate your career in a sense, like professional football, baseball, whatever. But I think up until that point, maybe even like high level football, SEC, right? Like Alabama, Texas, whatever. But ideally, in like 99, 98% of other sports, like I know winning is still an important thing because we're all competitors, but we're also trying to build people up, as we've mentioned multiple times. So winning is still relatively important in a sense, even if it's not the number one priority. But for you, how do you build a successful program on the level of wins? And how do you get people to win, knowing that it's a relative individual sport, even though it's kind of like wrestling, individuals probably put into a team score, which then help teams win, whatever. But like, how do you build that wins or wins, I should say, and then how do you sustain it over time as a school and as a program?
So, through my career, I've actually had opportunities to have teams that were winning. And at the time, I had good competitors on the timed event side and the rough stock side of things. And I truly feel like that's to maintain longevity in winning in your program. You need to have that at this level. I know there's been teams in the past that have won, all on one end or all on the other, but not very often. And so, me having a timed event background, I get more timed event guys wanting to come here because they know they're going to get like my coaching from me in the timed event side of things. But I got a rough stock coach now. We've always had outstanding bucking horses here that Sankey Pro Rodeo provides for us. And doing the champion living thing, like that's our goal, is building up our rough stock side to where we can be competitive at the team level, winning team championships. Yeah. Ultimately, that's my goal every year. I want to take a team to the college finals and watch them compete well. So
that's fair.
So that's, okay. And then on the women's side of things, again, you got to have a little you got to be able to, in all around cowgirls are the big thing. Like if they're working 4 events and you put them on your points team, they get a lot better chance of winning points is one way or another. So yeah, the one getting those kids that work multi events are huge too.
Huge. Oh yeah. Diversity within the events is and double dipping is important. So absolutely. Okay. So I have a few more questions for you. I have one more deep question on this side, and then I have a few fun questions at the end. Hopefully we can get to before our time runs out here. But I do want to touch base with you on the final deep question, and those last ones are kind of more for fun, lighter side. So, but the last question I have for you is actually my favorite question. It's the name of the episode, the name of the podcast. It's my favorite question. It's why do you coach? What's your coach's why?
Man, so like when you first send out the email, and then I got to listen to some of your podcasts and whatnot, I was like, I've got to be on this show because it's cool. Like what you're doing is neat, but
I appreciate that.
Yeah, but it's to watch young adults grow, and to because there's really no other reason why a guy would do the things you do, and not that it's bad. And not that I don't enjoy all of it, because with the good comes the bad, and then vice versa. But like I love the horsemanship side of things. I like teaching that part of it to the kids that it pertains to. But ultimately, like I want to teach them like what it takes to dig deep and
absolutely.
Ultimate thing. And like when they come back, and I've coached long enough now to where you have like I've had kids leave and they're like kind of butthurt, if you will, and they leave in bad terms and call me back up later on and say, hey coach, thank you. Thanks for holding me accountable to that. I wasn't happy about it at the time, but I am now. And honestly, those are the biggest things. And like I've coached long enough now that I get to go to weddings. I've watched some older student athletes like having kids, and then it becomes even more special as you get on down the line.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. Do it for the love of the I don't even know the craft of being around horses, around the events, and obviously the people that you get to be around and what they grow into. So I love that. Yeah. I appreciate your why. Thanks for sharing that and knowing exactly what it is. And thanks for those words prior to you answering that. It always makes me feel good whenever, the name of the show or whatever, right, makes people intrigued to be on it. So I'm super excited that you were. If you guys are listening to this right now, if you guys are on YouTube, make sure you guys HTB, hit that bell, like, subscribe, all the 9 yards. If you guys are an audio listener, PocketCasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever it is, make sure you guys leave a review. Hit those stars, say what you got to say, but whatever you say with your chest, because Coach and I want to hear it. Coach, I'm down to my final few questions for you, and these are more fun questions. Hopefully, I've never honestly, these were really hard to think about. I don't know how to ask them, so hopefully they work, hopefully they don't. But this one's just fun because you're obviously Wyoming, so Yellowstone, right, is right up your alleyway. So one, have you watched the show?
Yes. Been a couple years.
Are you a fan of the show?
No.
Touche. Why is that? It's not realistic, I would assume. It's
Not
nothing
really.
like nothing like what ranchers and anything's ever really, maybe not ever, but it's nothing like what okay. So how much okay. So all right, we're going to pass that along. We're going to go to the next question. I think that it's more of a question about Yellowstone is now more of a, being so close to it. Is that a, I guess the right terminology, I don't even know how to ask this, is, recruiting wise, is that a huge thing that is beneficial to you? How is living next to Yellowstone beneficial to you? Maybe not only as a coach, but maybe individually, just as a person, when it comes to knowing that you have debatably one of the best and one of the biggest and maybe the best national park in the country, debatably maybe the world, right up your way.
So from the coaching standpoint, it doesn't really, it's pretty well closed when we're busy, right? And it is a beautiful time of beautiful area in the summertime. And in the wintertime, it's probably one of the biggest downfalls that we have is the wintertime that we deal with, and like we don't have a lot of cold weather here where we're at. Like we're kind of more of the banana boat or Wyoming. But so from the coaching side of things, it probably hurts us more than helps us. But from a personal side of things, we actually had an opportunity last year to do some trail rides up outside of Du Bois, which then, it's looking down into Yellowstone. And so we did that last year. We did some trail rides out of Crooked Creek Guest Ranch, and we're going to do it again. And I got to meet a lot of really cool people. And again, kind of getting to teach a little bit about, horses and that type of stuff to people that are like really green. So, and then take them in an area that is beautiful and they get to see Wyoming in a different way than they see it driving down the highway going 75 mile an hour, So
that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I like that a lot. That's cool. I like that. So cool. So then what state produces the best high school rodeo?
Okay. What state produces the best high school rodeo? Man, that is tough. There's certain regions that are probably stronger in certain events than other. Like I'm going to give Texas and New Mexico tie down roping. Wyoming, Nebraska. They'd probably get a lot of the steer wrestlers. Oklahoma. Team ropers are all over. Barrel racers are all over. Saddle bronc riders, they're pretty well known to come out of South Dakota. So but as far as opportunity and stuff, and like Utah is always super competitive, and so is Texas. I don't know. It's tough. That's a
That's
tough
a
question. Yeah, you tell me.
yeah, it made you think a little
Wyoming?
bit.
Yeah, just
Yeah,
Wyoming. Yeah. No, I
yeah,
don't know.
that's cool. Yeah, that was the idea of those, is to make you stump on at least something.
Yeah,
So
I really just stumbled all over. I don't
no,
really
it's
know.
cool. That's funny. That's the point of it. That's cool. I like it. That's cool. I mean, yeah, it's cool that it's a all over the place. So that's the idea of it too. Is, and you never know, right? If we ever get another rodeo coach on here, it's for debate. And if not, if you're the only one for a long time, you may get some emails or phone calls or whatever next time they see you, like, Coach,
Yeah.
I'm from Idaho. What are you talking about as the best state from Texas? Whatever, right? So it's all for fun.
I should probably have said Idaho. That is our little pocket over there because we're the closest college in this region to them. We get a lot of Idaho Cowboys.
Hey, you can't save yourself now. You can't save
No,
yourself now. It's
okay,
too late.
all right. That's good.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. That's funny. So I guess my final thing really quick is, when it comes to, like, I don't know if you know it's club, but like maybe on like the summer stuff, like we're county fair, stuff like that. What's the best maybe youth, or maybe even college, but like kind of that you under 20 to 24 year old event that happens in the summer, like maybe state fair somewhere, national event somewhere, something where these kids are going to, that are competing in the summertime. What's the best and nicest event in the country that you've seen or that you know about that happens each year?
So really, like from high school going into college, it would be like all the high school rodeo states are competing to get to the national level. And those are the ones that are held either in Gillette or in Rock Springs. Um, and those are the best. Like that,
Absolutely.
it's the best of the best. And they have, so if they're looking at from a high school standpoint of what they need to do to get noticed by a college rodeo coach, that right there would be in the summertime. That would.
Absolutely. Heck yeah. Okay. Coach, I really appreciate you jumping on here today. It's been an amazing episode. Thank you so much for jumping on. Thank you guys for listening. But with that being said, we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.